Hello, hello. Today you are going to learn about solving equations with decimals, and please excuse the dishwasher sound in the background. Just a quick review of what you should do when solving equations. Number 1, simplify if you can. Number 2, isolate the variable. The whole goal is to get that variable all by itself to see what it equals. Number 3, the golden rule of solving equations is whatever you do to one side, you must do to the other. Number 4, show all your work. And number 5, remember you should never miss any of these because you can plug in your solution and check to make sure that it is correct. You are going to follow the exact same process that you did for solving single-step equations, although today you're going to see what happens when you solve equations with decimals, which is exactly the same, except you follow your decimal rules. So it's just one extra added twist in there. So the very first equation, x plus 3 3/10 is equal to 5 68/100. There is nothing to simplify in this equation. So the next step would be you want to isolate this variable. So you ask yourself, how do I get x alone? Well, right now you're adding 3.3 to that, so you want to get rid of it. So the opposite of adding 3.3 would be subtracting 3.3. And the golden rule of equations is whatever you do to one side, you must do to the other. So you have to subtract 3.3 on both sides. Remember, when you add and subtract decimals, you must line up the decimal, which I have done. And remember that you can draw that line down the center to remind you of where that balance is in your scale or your equation. So there's my equal sign. And on this side, my positive 3.3 and a negative 3.3 cancel each other out and equal 0. So you are left with your variable of x on the left side. And then on the other side, you have 5.68 minus 3.3. This works out well because there's no borrowing involved, so 8 minus nothing. You could add in a 0 if you wanted to, it's not necessary. But 8 minus 0 or nothing is 8. 6 minus 3 is 3. You drop your decimal in the same place, and then 5 minus 3 is 2. Remember that you should never ever miss an equation because you can plug your answer back in and make sure that your answer is right. So that would mean that 2.38 plus 3.3 is equivalent to 5.68. Don't take for granted that this is right. Do the actual math and check it. So if I line those up, 2.38 plus 3.3, and if I add those up, I do get 5.68, which is equivalent on both sides, so I know that my answer or my solution is correct. So then I put a box around my answer and know that I did this correctly. On the second example, g minus 135.8 is equal to negative 92.5. I threw in even one more twist to this. Not only do you have to remember your decimal rules, but you have to remember your integer rules as well. Whoa, this is really getting fun here. So the opposite of, to isolate g, we need to do the opposite of subtracting, which is adding. So I am going to add 135.8, and the golden rule, whatever I do to one side, I must do to the other. And I'm keeping in mind that I'm working with decimals here, so I am going to line up my decimals. So 135.8. However, now I have to consider my integers. I am putting together negatives and positives, which means that they cancel out. The operation that I do when I add positives and negatives together is subtraction. So I am going to go off to the side and do 135.8 minus 92.5. 135.8 minus 92.5. Line up my decimal, 8 minus 5 is 3. 5 minus 2 is 3. 13 minus 9 is 4. So when I do that, I get 43.3. And my positive number has a higher absolute value, so I know that my answer is positive. This cancels out on the left side and leaves me with G. And of course, I am going to plug in my solution and make sure that that's correct. If I plug in 43.3 minus 135.8, I'm going to check and see if I do get negative 92.5. Over here, I am subtracting. I can always change subtracting to adding the opposite. So I am adding together 135.8 plus a positive 43.3, which means I actually have to find the difference of these. So 135.8. Sorry about that, put the decimal in the wrong spot. 135.8 minus 43.3 is 529. And in this case, my higher absolute value, 135.8, is negative. So that would be negative, which is what I started with in my problem. So I know that my solution is correct. As you can see, nothing has changed. However, you just need to remember your decimal rules, which when you add and subtract, you need to line up your decimals. And as always, with all math, please have fun.